190、89、88、87、86、85、84、83、82、81、180、
打ち上げ3分前です。
Running through the checklist at the 2-minute 48-second mark until liftoff. Everything continues to proceed on track. Again, this is about a 15.5-minute flight from liftoff until the time that the HTV-9 spacecraft separates from the second stage of the H-2B rocket. A good close-up view of the three of the four solid rocket boosters that surround the first stage of the H-2B, the launch vehicle managed by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries.
140、39、38、37、36、35、34、33、32、31、130、29、28、
T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
26、25、24、23、22、120、19、18、17、16、15、14。
Launch pad floodlights creating a luminescent effect on the H-2B rocket as it prepares to begin its journey to send the final HTV cargo craft to the International Space Station.
1段液体酸素系準備完了。
Pressurization complete of the liquid oxygen system of the first stage.
90 seconds until launch.
2段液体酸素系液体水素系準備完了。
Followed by the pressurization of liquid oxygen and hydrogen system of the second stage. They are now complete.
76、75、74、73、72、71、70、69、60。
スペクター冷却開始。
1 minute until launch. Everything in good shape. T-minus 44 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds and counting. T-minus 14 seconds and counting, standing by for engine ignition. We have engine start.
Activating the thermal batteries.
電システム準備完了。
All systems are go.
メインエンジンスタート。
And we have liftoff. A rising sun over the land of the rising sun as JAXA's H-2B rocket and the HTV-9 cargo craft take flight.
飛行機は2020年5月21日午前2時31分00秒に
Roll, pitch, and yaw program in effect. The H-2B rocket takes flight to the International Space Station.
Space Center at 2:31:00 a.m.
Liftoff occurring right on the dot at 12:31 p.m. even Central Time, 2:31 a.m. Japan
打ち上げ以
time.
降ロケットの完成は
44 seconds into the flight.
竹崎総合司令塔に引き継がれ
Just passing 1 minute into the flight, everything continuing to look good.
ロケットは正常に飛行中であり、種子島の地上局は正常にロケットの追尾を行っています。
The H-2B flight is
4 solid rocket boosters, 2 liquid fuel engines propelling the HTV-9 towards its preliminary orbit, coming up on the 1 minute 30-second mark into the flight. Coming up on the 2-minute mark into the flight. Coming up on solid rocket booster shutdown and separation.
SLB is confirmed as
1
And we have solid rocket booster jettison.
separation of the first and second pairs of SLBs.
2.5 minutes into the flight. First stage engines are continuing to fire, as they will until about the 5-minute 46-second mark into the flight, at which point those engines will shut down. The first stage will separate.
engine
3 minutes, 10 seconds into the flight, everything proceeding normally. The first stage continues to burn in excellent shape. All good reports coming in from the Range Control Center at Tanegashima.
The first stage engine, attitude control, and trajectory are all normal. The HTV flight is on hold. Current altitude is about 93 kilometers. Velocity is approximately 1.9 kilometers per second.
Coming up on the 4-minute mark into the flight. About 2 minutes to go in first stage performance. The H-2B rocket is operating in normal fashion. Four and a half minutes into the flight, which has been flawless so far. Everything proceeding well. Good first stage performance. The solid rocket boosters that separated just over 2 minutes into the flight did their job in augmenting the dual first stage engines on the H-2B rocket. This is the final flight of the H-2B to be replaced with the new H-3 rocket that JAXA will be employing for its new genre of cargo craft called the HTV-X that is scheduled to launch about 2 years from now. 5 minutes, 5 seconds into the flight.
It's 5 minutes after liftoff.
ロケットは順調に飛行を続けており、現在の高度は約 155km、秒速約 4km です。
The combustion of the first stage engine, attitude control, and trajectory are all normal. The H-2B flight is on course. Current altitude is about 155 kilometers. Velocity is approximately 4.0 kilometers per second.
Five minutes, 56 seconds into the flight.
The first stage engine cut off. Separation of the first and second stages.
And now we have confirmation of separation of the first and second stages. This is animation driven by real-time telemetry from the Range Control Center at Tanegashima. The second stage is now up and running. The single engine on the second stage is firing and will continue to do so for about 8.5 minutes, almost 9 minutes of performance. The second stage ignition occurred on time. The trajectory of the vehicle is reported to be perfect. Second stage engine cutoff will come at about the 14.5 minute mark into the flight. Coming up on the 8-minute mark into the flight, which so far has been flawless. The second stage engine continues to burn in a nominal fashion to continue propelling the HTV-9 cargo craft towards its preliminary orbit. As the HTV-9 lifted off from Tanegashima, there were kanpai, as they say in Japanese, cheers in the Launch Control Center, marking the start of the final flight of the H-2B rocket and the final flight of this class of HTV cargo craft that made its debut in September of 2009. Passing the 8.5-minute mark into the flight, as you can see from this telemetry-driven animation provided by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, the trajectory is on the money. For the second stage performance continues to be good from the reports being received from the Range Control Center at Tanegashima. Launch engineers continue to report nominal performance for the H-2B rocket. Now passing the 9.5-minute mark into the flight. Again, the highlight component of the cargo being carried to the International Space Station, the final half-dozen brand new lithium-ion batteries and associated adapter plates that will be installed on the far starboard truss of the International Space Station, the S6 truss. A series of EVAs or spacewalks are being considered for potting into the cruise timeline later on this summer. EVA preparations are being conducted, and the space station program will make a final determination on how those EVAs will be dispositioned in the weeks to come. Again, the battery replacement work began in January of 2017 on the truss segments of the International Space Station to provide the final upgrades for the station's power system for the remainder of its lifetime. "11 minutes into the flight, we have about 4 minutes and change of second stage performance left for the H-2B rocket. The velocity of the H-2B rocket is matching all of the pre-launch parameters. Good second stage performance. Good vehicle control as we are coming up on the 12-minute mark into the flight. Once again, from the animation that you're looking at provided by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, the vehicle traveling some 6,700 meters per second. Good reports continue to come in from the Range Control Center at Tanegashima, where liftoff occurred 12 minutes and 45 seconds ago. Telemetry from the H-2B rocket and the HTV-9 cargo ship being processed through a series of ground stations being employed by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency on the trajectory of its flight. We're about 2 minutes away from the completion of second stage performance. "14 minutes into the flight, everything continuing to go well. Good vehicle control being reported. Good engine performance on the second stage. Meanwhile, the International Space Station has crossed the west coast of Africa, moving from southwest to northeast. And we have a report of second stage shutdown on time. We'll be standing by for spacecraft separation moments from now. "15 minutes into the flight, standing by for spacecraft separation." And this view now from the Range Control Center at Tanegashima. Applause as we have confirmation of spacecraft separation. The HTV-9 now in its preliminary orbit. A flawless launch and a flawless climb to orbit for the final HTV vehicle, now well on its way to the International Space Station. This is Mission Control Houston, back here in the white flight control room where the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers monitored the successful launch of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency's H-2B rocket and the final H-2 transfer vehicle, the HTV-9. On console, Flight Director Marcos Flores and spacecraft communicator Aki Hoshide, veteran Japanese astronaut, as we monitored the progress of the vehicle's climb to orbit and the spacecraft separation that delivered the HTV-9 vehicle into its preliminary orbit as it begins its 5-day chase to catch up to and arrive at the International Space Station. Once again, to recap, a flawless countdown. Everything proceeded without a hitch. Liftoff occurring right on time at 12:31 p.m. Central Time, 2:31 a.m. Japan time on Thursday. The H-2B rocket lit up, illuminating the Tanegashima Space Center in southern Japan as it began its climb out arcing out to the northeast in pursuit of the International Space Station. The first stage performance with 2 liquid fuel engines and 4 solid rocket boosters went as advertised, followed by the singular power of the second stage engine that carried the HTV-9 to its preliminary orbit, where it now begins its journey to the International Outpost to deliver some 4 tons of cargo, as well as the new set of lithium-ion batteries to complete the power upgrades to the station's power system. So with that, we'll wrap up our coverage with a programming note. The HTV-9 will arrive at the International Space Station next Monday, Memorial Day. Our rendezvous and capture coverage will begin at 5:45 a.m. Central Time, 6:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Capture with NASA's Chris Cassidy operating the Canadarm2 robotic arm is scheduled at 7:15 a.m. Central, 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll take a break at that point as Cassidy turns over control of the robotics to ground controllers here in Houston, who will maneuver the HTV-9 to the nadir or Earth-facing port of the Harmony module for its installation and bolting into place, with that coverage beginning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So with that, we'll wrap up our coverage for today. A successful launch of the HTV-9 on time, being delivered to orbit by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency for its final flight to the International Space Station. With that, we wish you a good day. Please stay safe and follow all the rules associated with conquering this coronavirus pandemic. And we'll see you back on Monday morning with HTV-9 capture coverage here on NASA television. For now, this is Mission Control Houston.